Well, in the villages over 20 years, you will see a lot of technical solutions. Villages will use their own manure and urine to make energy, biogas. There will be a solution for drinking water from the ditches. It will be cleaned, and there will be a lot of solar energy. All the houses, and sometimes you have the meadows full of sun energy. There will be good isolated houses. The warming is with electricity, and
we have some very small villages, and I hope that they will be alive 20 years from now, which means that the young people should stay to live in the rural environment, and the minimum for making their living proper is to make the infrastructure basis, the roads, the school. We have some very small primary schools which are very important to keep the village alive. And we have this beautiful nature still alive because of these people which are living there, and this should be a kind of solution for developing tourism in this area. And when the young people will have their job, they will have their places to live good in it, they will stay and they will make these villages alive.
So in a few words, I think it's very important that people can work and live in the small community and not transform the place, dormitory place. So I think it's important to create things around this main issue, which is really living and working in the village.
People will have their community gardens where you have vegetables, where you have fruits. There will be a lot of flowers. There will be a lot of bees in the villages. There are a lot of systems around the team local economy. You have local currency systems. You don't have any more belongings, so you don't have a fridge, but you are buying cold, and the fridge is from the company. You will buy light, and the lamp the bulb is from the company. You will buy something on the floor that isn't your own carpet, and after a few years they will pick it up and they make a new carpet of it. So no property anymore.
For us, it's about making sure that people want to live here, because in the rural area of Iceland, it's really a struggle to make people understand that it's really possible to live here and to do work, and it's possible to have a really good life here, even better than in the city. So we have to think about how to make it more visible, that it is a good thing to be living in a rural area.
Yeah, there always will be a community hall, I hope, because that's the place where people are able to get together in rather big groups. A lot of people say that it's getting less important to have the community hall, but I think when there just don't fit more than 10 people in the living room. So if you want to do something together in the village, you have to be able to get together. So a smart village, to me, will still have a community hall, but also will use all new kinds of lines or ways to be in contact with each other in between your neighbors, and have contact with your neighbors.
Well, all communities must have their own vision. They must have a vision for the future.
I believe that the most important tool is being connected to the people, which means coming to their village, coming to their community, make conversation with them, be able to listen to them, to their problems, to their wishes, to their ambitions, and then to make common decisions, common plans, where we try to involve everybody as much as possible in the situation where we are in.
Every person counts, that every person is really involved in the local improvement of all these social aspects.
The initiative must come from the people themselves. If something comes from the government or someone above, it usually doesn't work. That's our experience, at least. But when the people realize that something needs to be done, something needs to be changed or added to the community, when it comes from themselves, then things happen. But sometimes they only need a little motivation. They need to have a place to work, access to computers and printers and the internet and things like that, and just a place to come together and to work on the projects.
Very old and very young people are thinking together about the future. And this kind of knowledge exchange, which is from one part, it is very important to keep the tradition alive, but for the other hand, it's very important to get the new knowledge from the young people to the older generations. I believe this is very important. Gatherings, exchanging knowledge, but in the way that they are equals. There is not smarter and less smart. They are not more important or less important. They are all important.
I'm thinking that you need to know where you're coming from, what your history is, to be able to know where you're going. Because you have to know your own background before you go forward. I think it's something that we use as a starting point, really.
People have to trust to each other and the local community, and it is the most important to give them the courage to enter different positions in the local community organizations, different volunteering associations or different activities, events, and so on.
The inhabitants must be active. They must be to realize that they are responsible for their own future, that they must be active in the project regarding their village future.
To bring people together, like bring the villages together and bring the professionals together, and make sure that nobody is doing is on their own in inventing stuff which is already invented in other places. And I think it's really important for villagers to talk to each other about these things. It's always really good to talk about it with other people who also live in a small village and not only with professionals.
We need to stop and look around. What do we have here? We have, of course, beautiful nature and the water and the wind and the snow, but we also have lots of stories that are interesting and different. And then we can use those stories to make a company. We have, for example, a lady in the countryside that's doing guided tours with only stories about the trolls and the elves and all the different things that we have in our area. And that's what we are made of. That's our story. That's what shaped the people in this area into what we are today. So that's why I think we need to use that.
And the main message we have is start a working group in the villages of people who are motivated to undertake action.
So we try to work, everybody has an assignment, we define the project, we always work around the project, always. And then after the project we have a mission, or people have to have like technical information they have to look for. And then we gather the information, and then we always have a field work. So more or less is the way we work, and it works more or less. We have good results for the last 3 years.
Of course, the start is to make it fun, because people only will use their spare time to do things for each other when they also have some benefit for themselves. And one of the key things, I think, is that people enjoy doing something for each other. And then the second thing is to do things for the community and for the village to make it better together.
Idea is nice to have ideas. We have a think tank with thousands of ideas, but then we have to arrive to a term to say, okay, this idea is good. We go and we work on this idea. So that's what I mean when I say it's we have to be open, but a bit organized way to solution, because otherwise it's only philosophical, you know, just only about ideas. I love ideas, but I think it's also nice if people can see that they succeed to put the idea on the paper and then touch it, you know, and work on it, because this is, I think, which brings the community together. It's the challenge to achieve something. For me, I think it's the best experience we had. It's a pleasure to see the smile on the face on the people, to see that their success and it's working. And that's, I think, it's the best accomplishment that we could have on the community work. And you have to have a leader. Without a leader, because I think it's, even if you're very open and open-minded to ideas, there is a time when you have to say, okay, stop, this is the project, we go forward, and we have to do this like that and like this. So we have to be open to the others, but with the iron hands covered with silver gloves.
I think it's really important to start off with the subject where you get really enthusiastic, and you will be able to get a group of people together to work on that together.
Yes, I think it's nice to start on a small project that you can get your hands around, really. That you have a beginning, a middle and an end. You have to have pillars. You have to be able to assess how good it's going. So if you start with a small project that you can see that is really making a difference, then you will get the courage to do a bigger project. And I think it's like a snowball that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger in a positive way, really.
Just don't make it too complicated. Make it fun. And it doesn't matter where you start. Just start with something small, and then you'll find that it'll grow, and it will turn out to something really nice and beautiful.
Right, we are back over here. Due to the camera battery running out. The learning lesson here is that the camera isn't powered by the USB supply when it's running. It is in fact powered still by its battery. So that's next time we do that. This session is very much looking at engaging the community in the activities, and particularly looking at how do you move from that very, very small group of people that are maybe kickstarting activity, or even that one activist who's very, very keen to kind of get something running, to involving the wider community. So I'm joined by sort of several colleagues. I think the easiest is if I let them introduce themselves. So going to my left.
I'm Anne Tansley-Thomas, and I work at Norfolk County Council. I'm a senior consultation and involvement officer, so my job is to help engage communities and get them involved in our activities. But I'm also one of these dreaded community activists in my own village, so I'm passionate about rural life and very actively involved in making things happen in my local area.
I'm Peter Braybrook. I'm a retired construction project manager. I'm also a parish councillor for a small village about 7 miles from here called North Elmham. We've got 1,160 people on the electoral roll, and with children added in, we've probably got 1,600 people living in 760 houses. So we're a small rural village, We're actively trying to develop the community spirit within the village, and that's what we're here to talk about today, really. And this is my colleague Meg White.
I'm an ex-teacher. I've always taught people things, riding, netball, you name it. I can teach it. I can't do it, but I can teach it. And then I was a charity fundraiser for a large children's charity for many years. So I fall into the, if you want something doing and a fund starting, ask Meg, she'll help out. So I'm here in that sort of a supportive capacity as trying to get money out of people.
I'm Rick Martin. I work for the Norfolk RCC. I also spend quite a lot of time trying to get money out of people, usually the government. I've been involved for probably 35 years in working with community projects, developing outreach, developing education in rural areas, and I've seen a huge range of change and a huge range of trends in how that is done. I have been an activist. I now have no time to be an activist because I'm far too busy trying to raise money from the government.
Thank you very much. If I can just ask you to speak up a little bit, just for the benefit of the microphones. I don't think we'll deafen our studio audience. Norfolk RCC routinely undertakes consultation to sort of identify what some of the key issues community faces are. And recently what's come back consistently is that actually it's not funding that's the top issue for communities. It's getting people involved in community projects, whether that's as volunteers to help run them, or whether it's just getting people to turn up and participate in activities. I guess start off with Anne and Megan and Peter. From your experience, is that something that rings true from North Elmham?
Yeah, well, our background is that we needed to develop a plan of how we were going to move the village forward. So we came up with the North Elmham Community Plan, and there's copies there that people can look at later. And this was an in-depth consultation where we managed to get the highest response rate of any small village in the country to this type of plan, and we got approaching 90% of people responding. And how we did that is that we just didn't send out a questionnaire. We sent people door knocking. They went on knocked on people's doors. We had activity. We've got various clubs and associations and societies within the village, and we went and we did active presentations at each of these societies, and we came up with a plan of how we wanted to develop the village in the medium, the short term and the long term. And we've got highlighted points here of how we were going to develop after the consultation to get things in the village that people really wanted.
Anna, similarly from your perspective, both as a community activist and in your work role, is that the challenge of getting people involved? Is that something you recognise?
I think it is, and it's quite varied from community to community. So in some communities that are quite well-heeled, quite wealthy areas, lots of retired people with a lot of time, actually there's no difficulty there. But in some of the more deprived areas, there are lots of people with families, people working, commuting. Actually, it's a real struggle to find volunteers and to get people involved. So it's quite spread across the area.
So Rick, something that's harder in deprived areas to get people involved? Similar experience?
Absolutely. One of the key problems in the more deprived areas is people haven't got the time to volunteer as much as they would like to, because they're often working. They're both partners are working. They're having to look after the kids. It becomes more of a challenge to become engaged, and communication is a real problem as well, because actually they don't have the networks that allow them to know what's going on, because they're not engaging in the first place, so they're not actually finding out. So it's quite difficult to recruit, even for short, small engagements, because they just don't know that anything is needed. And that can be a real challenge. And it's becoming an increasing challenge as we have, as John mentioned earlier, more and more affordable housing, second home properties, because the spread of community gets wider, and it becomes even more difficult to actually keep contact with your neighbours, because your neighbours may not actually be there for 6 months of the year.
Peter, Anne, I mean, you both mentioned in your introductions about being retired from your professional life. Was that a key trigger for you getting involved in community activities?
Well, it was really, because when I worked, I actually commuted from here to London for 30 years. So really, I didn't have a tremendous amount of free time. But when I did have some free time, I wanted to do something really good and get involved in village community and build on the good spirit. We've got a really part of this community plan. We asked people how they felt about the village, and over 80% were really positive about living in the village and how friendly it was and how people still spoke to one another, which often in the big towns people don't do that. So we've really tried to build on the community spirit. And last year we had a fantastic opportunity because we had several unique things come up. We had the Diamond Jubilee of our Queen, 60 years on the throne. So we had a massive street party. It started off with a small group of people deciding that they would like to mark this unique celebration. And in the end, we had a committee of about 15 people. We started off with a budget of £1,500, and that grew to £2,500. And the day was just wonderful. We had a marching band, a jazz band. We had every child
Fancy
in the
dress,
village got a mug with the Queen's, a commemorative mug. We had a massive street party where most of the food was provided by the villagers. We buried a time capsule, and on the back of that we involved the school, and the school used the time capsule as a project, and all the children wrote of how their lives were, how they saw their lives in 50 years' time, which is when the time capsule will be opened.
Tree.
We purchased the village is called Elmham, so we purchased an elm tree and we planted that on the village green, and we put the time capsule under this tree. And we also, because of the Queen's Jubilee, we purchased an oak, a royal oak from Sandringham, which is on the coast near here, and we have a millennium wood, and we planted 400 new trees as an extension to the 7-acre millennium wood. The central point of that is the royal oak, which will obviously be, we hope when it grows, will be a wonderful thing for everyone to remember the Jubilee. So those are the sorts of things we're trying to do to enhance the community spirit within the village.
So Anne and Rick, I guess start with Anne and move to Rick. That kind of model of using community events, and I guess what I would talk about as community stunts, the tree planting, the commemorative mug, etc., as a model or a mechanism to get involved. Is that something that you've seen work in the past?
Just to carry on from the Jubilee thing, never underestimate the power of those national events or topical events to get people motivated in the community. Because all across Norfolk, the Jubilee, so many communities got involved. In our particular village, which had issues around different groups actually coordinating and communicating, it's the one thing that we've managed to get together over. And now there's been, after the Jubilee events, more of a feel for actually coordinating the activities. So those big national occasions or things that are happening can be a real focus. In terms of events and stunts, I think the main thing, just from the practical experience, is it's just got to be fun, hasn't it? Nobody wants to go and sit in a dull committee perhaps for hours on end, or have anything too sort of serious. In order for people to get engaged and involved, they've got to get something out of it, something fun, something enjoyable, something easy to understand and to latch onto. So absolutely, I think those types of activities can act as a real focus for getting people involved, especially those people that might not tend to turn up to other things that are happening.
I'd take that one further and say it's actually essential to do activities that bring everybody together. And it's really important that you do a number of them, because as you say, you will often get a small portion of the community will come to one event, but they won't necessarily come to the second. So you need a range of things available. You need to think about who your audience is and have things targeting young people, have things targeting young families, have people of all ages can attend, because that will actually help to bring together that kind of interaction. I think one of the key things, though, in all of those is that really important aspect of the steering group, or the few active people who will get that activity up and running and promote and encourage people to attend. Once that starts to snowball, lots of people will get engaged and lots of people will make it happen, but it always needs a few motivated, interested people to kickstart those things. And things like a Jubilee, I mean, are a great way of providing that impetus, because there's always going to be somebody who's keen to do something in that particular arena. And I think it's about utilising the skills that everybody has to get those things off the ground and letting them grow, and then engaging with as many as possible.
So Meg, did you see that boon from those big sort of national events over the summer? Have you seen that continue into participation and engagement in other things in the village?
Well, yes, because people met people. We had a big barbecue at night, and we have a local community smallholding group which came out of the parish plan, and everybody said, when they said about having a smallholding, oh, you can't do that won't work. And it's great, it's brilliant. And we had their sausages, so they provided the meat for the sausages. We had this big barbecue, and you met people that you'd never met before, and I think that's set off quite a good sort of thing. So you can now talk to people and say, oh, hello, I've seen you, I've met you, because you can't beat face-to-face discussion, can you? And just talking to people has helped us with other things, because we've then been able to say, oh, you were at that, were you interested in joining this? And one of the things that's come out of this plan, and the Jubilee in a way, has been that smaller groups have come along and said, do you think we could start a singing group? Do you think we could do a knitting group? I mean, nothing earth-shattering.
Spanish.
But Spanish. He goes to Spanish because of this. But all these little groups are sort of, if you like, they're making little building blocks, so that when we come along to do something else, perhaps all these little building blocks will get together and form a wall, because we are still trying to increase things. There were an awful lot of people in the parish plan wanted more education, in the sense that they wanted to do Pilates, they wanted to do, the older ones, computers, we wanted all sorts of classes. And I think we had a list of about 97 different things people wanted. So we started at the bottom. So, okay, we've gone singing, we've got the Spanish, we're trying for French, and we've had an offer, so perhaps we'll get there in the future. We've done sewing and knitting, but these are community things. They're knitting people together, literally. And that's, I think, when your people feel comfortable with other people, they're more willing to do something with them. And this is what we're, little building blocks, and we're hoping we're growing and getting towards our aims.
Excellent. Rick, you wanted to come in there?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that it just reminded me, that never underestimate the power of remembering somebody's name. I recently was working with somebody who was doing a community pub, and a member of the audience was kind of sitting there saying, well, I'd been in this village for 2 years and never spoken to anybody until one day I went in the pub and somebody remembered my name and said, hi, Bill. Now I go in there every night and I'm involved in lots of things. But until somebody remembered my name, I wasn't really comfortable. And it's a policy that a lot of projects I've worked in, and we've tried to encourage. Certainly when I worked in Norwich, and we did a lot of work in some of the more deprived areas there, trying to get things like homework clubs off the ground and get parents involved, remembering the names of their children, remembering the names of their dog. Those little details make such a difference, because people feel they're part of something if you remember who they are. They're not anonymous anymore, and it is really important. And it only takes that spark of, oh, actually they know who I am, so that you feel comfortable saying their name back, and you've got a conversation going that you may not have had, even though you may have seen each other every day for years.
Although I've got a different, another side to that. I'm a newcomer in my village. I've only been there for 5 years. And when I first came in, I didn't know anybody. You try and make these connections. And I thought, I really want to get involved in village life. And I had the parish newsletter, and I was reading through this, and it said, oh, if you want to get involved in this, you must talk to Mavis. But that was it. There was no telephone number, no surname, no address. Who is this Mavis? How do I find her? How do I recognise her? I'd really want to do that thing, but who is she? And some villages, in a sense, locked. It's the community is so set up for the people in it. They don't think necessarily about the people coming in that don't know who Mavis is. Now, me and Mavis were like this. I'm her best friend, and I'm fully tied in. But coming from the outside, and other events were advertised, but without the location. And I'm thinking, well, I'd really love to go to the barbecue, but where is it? It's not mentioned. How do people find out where to go? So it's that interesting thing of when you've got quite a tight-knit community, how do you break into that or open it up so that other people can get involved?
So we're picking out some themes there, that this need to make it fun, the ability to capitalise on national events, on stunts, on other community events, and use that to snowball community activity. I guess the responsibility for our communities to be open to newcomers, particularly where some of our communities measure newcomers in generational terms as opposed to years. As a community development worker, there was always the challenge of whenever a community said, "Oh, come into the village, it's obvious where to go," always meant that it was obvious if you'd lived there for the last 35 years, but not necessarily if you've never been there before and were driving in the dark in the winter. I think we can recognise all those things. I guess one of the challenges is, yes, we want to be involved in success stories. We want to be involved in things that are fun, but some of the grunt work, the committee meetings, the filling in reports for the charity commission, the funding bids. These are things that are not fun to do. I don't think any of us, I'm seeing nods, bearing in mind everyone on the table I think has done these at some times. Thoughts from anyone, how to engage some of those people that maybe you've engaged in the fun activities and move them on to some of that, the less glamorous, the less fun activities, but nevertheless the activities that underpin, that are vital to some of those other things to happen.
Well, with the community plan, one of the major things that came out of the community plan was that people wanted to be involved in sustainable energy and to obviously save money if possible. And we formed a subgroup, which I became the chairman of, and we managed to secure some funding from the government under the LEAF. There was a programme last year called LEAF, which was Local Energy Action Fundraising or something for sustainability. And we got a £2,500 grant to come up with a sustainable energy thing, and we made this our tag. This young person with I don't know if you can see that, but that's a low energy light bulb. And then we introduced a questionnaire that went out to every village, every house in the village, and again it had the same tag. This little child holding that thing up, and we got a tremendous response to that. And then we decided that that's got 8 questions on it. We then came up with a detailed questionnaire, which we wanted 10% of the village to fill in. So it was our aim was to get 70 of these filled in, and we in fact got 65 filled in. But you can see they're quite detailed, and from that we came up with the plan, which is here somewhere.
You've got a plan.
We came up with this report, which you can see is
quite detailed.
A massive report. But talking about there's a lot of work in there. There's probably hundreds of hours of work, and we had 4 people that actually did the work, and we had one girl who probably did 120 hours, and she actually produced this report. So you've got to find these diamond people, we call them. You know, someone who is really and she was so enthusiastic with this. And as a profession, she does report writing, and you can see it's got all the buzzwords in there, all the right diagrams, and
perfect.
And it's a perfect thing. And we have moved forward from that. One of the things that came out of it was street lighting. We've got just traditional street lighting. We're halfway through an investigation into providing LED lights with a night star system that turns the lights off at 12 o'clock at night, and then they come back. You know, as the light fades, they turn on, and they turn off at 12 o'clock, and then they turn on at 5:30 in the morning in the winter, and they turn off when the light reaches. So we've moved from the action plan to a detailed thing to moving on to actually implementing some of the things.
So I guess, Rick, coming to you, that pathway would recognise of the planning and the assessment, the consultation, moving to a detailed plan, moving to delivery. But this idea that it's all down to the diamonds in the community, or the community champions, as we might call it. Is that something you recognise? Is that something
Sadly,
that's a challenge?
yes. I think sadly that is too often the case. And one of the key things in terms of sustaining something for any length of time is about identifying more than one diamond, or identifying somebody who's maybe a ruby instead of a diamond, who can do some of the other work. And it's about not putting all of the work on one person for any great length of time. One of the biggest problems that you find, I've met many people who are those diamonds in the community, and they work 4 or 5 years religiously on a particular project. When it comes to the next big thing, they're not interested anymore because they've actually done their bit and they're worn out. And it's because nobody has said, let's find some help, let's look for who's going to help out do the next bit. So, and that's why I said right at the beginning of this, one of the key things is about accessing as many people in the community as you can through a whole range of events if possible, because that way you find a much broader range of people to help out. And if they only help out in tiny amounts, in small parts, that can make a big difference to the amount of workload that 1 or 2 people will inevitably have. So it's quite important to actually find the right people to do those things, but not absolutely essential that you have a professional report writer. Great if you've got one, but use the community that you've got.
So,
and try to keep the activity as fun as possible.
And any tips for finding rubies and diamonds?
Okay. Again, it's your asset-based community development. It's actually knowing who is in your community and what they do and what their skills are and what they'd like. Some people, I know a gentleman who won't turn up to anything in the village, doesn't like to do any of that committee stuff or sociable bit, but he's got a work shed and he loves to make things. So I can easily get him to be involved in a part of a project because that plays to its strength and it's something that he enjoys. One of the things I think that we don't realise is there's been some research into volunteering, asking people why they don't volunteer, and one of the biggest answers that came back was that people don't volunteer because they've never been asked. So actually there's quite an untapped resource of people out there thinking, oh, I'd quite like to do something, but obviously they don't need me, nobody's ever asked. Or actually sometimes I find the diamonds in the community are the people that are bold and quite happy to ask people that they don't know to get involved or to do something. I'm a bit shy in regards of that, but others can do that and actually go up to complete strangers and said, oh, we need somebody to come and make the cups of tea and be on the rota. So it's reaching out through those directions. I also think that there are roles for organisations like yourselves and for organisations like the councils and that layer to actually offer some of that support and help so that those diamonds don't feel that they're on their own and they've got that specialist help to turn to. So again, they don't have to struggle needlessly with things that are too difficult, so that they feel supported from other areas.
Yeah, I mean, certainly something I think we recognise from working, predominantly our work is I guess with those diamonds, is their support needs and both the fact that being one of those diamonds can actually be quite an isolating experience because you are doing all that work, you can feel that no one else is helping, and the need for the pastoral support that is, I always talk about it being 80 or 90% of our work, but also the need for that 10% technical. The fact because being a diamond, it's very difficult to keep up with all the latest legislation, keep up with all the latest funding sources and where they are and that sort of support. Rick, you wanted to come in there?
Yeah, I was just saying that one of the things that is really important is to remember that all diamonds need polishing occasionally, and it's really important to do the celebration at the end. We, as a country, we're rubbish at doing that, and we do not put in our bids that an element that pays for that celebration, and actually funders often say they're not even interested in paying for it. It's a really vital part of any community project is about celebrating the success and saying thank you to the people who did the work publicly so that it's acknowledged that they did that work. Because there's nothing worse than doing loads and loads of work and nobody acknowledges it, apart from maybe the same people who are on that group with you. It's really hard. We do need to do much more about really celebrating what we do well.
Could I just say that when we started this plan, it took us over 2 years to start to get it printed, because when we started, we all wanted it. What questions do you ask your community? You could just say, what do you want to see? But if you don't guide them, you would have either nothing, because people won't answer if they've got to write an essay as an answer, and you've got to ask the right questions, and they've not got to be ambiguous, or you've got to get the sort of answer you want. It mustn't be a yes or no. You want to know what they're actually thinking. And I have to say that if we hadn't had the Rural Community Council holding our hand, we would still be writing these questions. We wanted about 1,000 questions, and they came along and said, no.
2,000.
2,000. No. I think we got down to just about 100. But really, we should have had less. I mean, we did go over the top. But we did get the answers we wanted on the whole. But we would have, without their guidance and their polishing and their smacking hands, you can't do that. We would never, ever have done it. So it's a public thank you for everything. No. Because we went off on tracks, like you do. You go galloping off down this path. And it's not the right one, because it's not going to bring the answer. But in a committee, we were all convinced this was what we wanted to do. And so, thank you. You kept us going, and you're part of Northallerton.
Thank you for that, and the vote of confidence. So we've talked about this idea of the importance of the diamonds. We've talked about the need to polish our diamonds, whether that's in terms of just supporting them with sort of moral encouragement and saying thank you, or supporting them with technical skills, and the importance of those developing those personal links to draw new diamonds in. I guess to push this analogy even further, diamonds have a relationship with coal. Coal being a compressed diamond, we find diamonds very attractive. We don't always find coal as attractive, although it can be very useful. And I think I'm breaking an analogy now. One of the challenges we've sometimes found is that those very people that are those community activists can sometimes push other people away. I guess, firstly, going back to you guys, is that something you've seen in your community? Is it something you've experienced?
Well, it does occasionally happen, because people always say, oh, well, they always do that. They don't need me. And that group always does that, so it's no good me getting involved. And one of the things we did get after the Jubilee was, now we've got this beautiful green, 7 acres of wonderful land. What are we going to do with it? And somebody said, well, of course, we ought to run a village day once a year and have a celebration, and we could have, a barbecue and a fete and get things for the children and have everybody out there. And then somebody asked, who's going to run it? I say, you are. Well, you can. Ah, well. So you come up with the ideas, we'll float it round everybody, and then go out and ask people, because you find, as you say, if you don't ask, you don't find them. The face-to-face contact. I like to say we have an excellent village magazine which puts everything in. Phone numbers, what time they go to bed, what time they're available, everything in there.
Meg is the editor.
Sorry, no, co-editor, please. But the thing is, we've learned that you can't just say, see Meg, because if you don't know who Meg is, it's called tough, isn't it? So you put all the details in. But in the magazine, people always ring up and say, will you put me an advert in and ask for somebody to help me with so-and-so? Of course we will. But the actual answer is really go out there and say, excuse me, are you interested in so-and-so? Have you ever thought of this? Would you like to come? And face-to-face confront, knocking on doors is one of the ways to get people to help, because otherwise they'll say, well, no, nobody's asked me, so they obviously don't want me. And a written appeal doesn't have the same, they just read it and it goes in one ear, out the other, I'm afraid. So it's
no, I mean, that's something. One of the challenges that we consistently find is community groups will come to us, and inevitably it's the Lord Kitchener picture of your community needs you, and they'll say, we'll put this in the post office, and that will get us our volunteers, and it's the gentlest possible way of sort of saying no, it's about connecting individually.
Yeah.
But just sticking with this idea, Rick, this idea that activists can sometimes push people away as well as pull them in, is that something you've seen?
Oh, a number of times. I mean, there are always going to be personality issues. And also, I mean, it's not just a question of personality issues. Sometimes the only volunteer is probably somebody who's really well-meaning but slightly gaga. We have had that a lot. And then actually all the things that you hope will get done don't get done, or don't get done in the way that you want them to. And that also creates the same kind of challenges, not driving people away so much, but people just drift away because they don't actually think it will happen. And it goes back to what I said earlier about having as many people engaged and involved as possible who can support and help, so that you can, A, spread the load, but also spread the things that go wrong, because they do inevitably go wrong. Sometimes, though, you just have to bite the bullet when you get somebody who's a really strong personality and has absolutely insists that it's got to be done their way, and there is no other way to do it. Sometimes you just have to say, I'm sorry, but the rest of the community does not agree. And that's sometimes where a community consultation that's done in a public forum can really be powerful. If you can get a number of people in the community all saying, no, actually what we want is this, it can make a big difference. It can change the dynamic considerably. It can bring in new people. And sometimes that's the way to break that kind of deadlock.
So, Anna, I guess it doesn't. You don't have to be crazy to be a community activist, but it helps. Is my in or it hinders.
I have come across examples.
Just dumping that question on you.
I realise that it's live, so I'm trying to kind of, and public, be careful about the examples I give. I think local politics, village politics, is a complete nightmare sometimes, and can be. And sometimes people definitely decide not to get involved just because somebody is leading it, and make a conscious decision. Oh, if they're doing it, then no, we know what that's going to be like, and I'm not going to get involved. Sometimes some of the struggles with these diamonds is actually thinking, well, you're doing this activity at the moment, but there's somebody else who might be better at that, but you've been doing it for 20 years, so how do we move that situation on? Finding the diamonds with the patience and the people skills and the diplomacy to do that. I think one of the difficulties that we face, or we've seen, is that where projects do go badly wrong, where you get villages that are fractured in two competing halves, warring against each other, how painful that is, and what a bad effect that has on other communities nearby. That, for example, village halls, if that's what happened with that village hall and the arguments and the legal costs, whatever, our village isn't going to touch that because it could happen to us. So that the damaging effects where things really go bad is a real risk, and again it's some getting external and independent bodies that can come in and perhaps try and heal those communities and bring people together when it actually gets to that difficult point.
Yeah, and I guess we talked in the previous session about this idea of going into communities and using other communities to inspire people, and that idea of stimulating that activity. But I guess one of the challenges can be either that those inspirational stories come with challenges, and that can put people off, or I'm looking at you two, that you find people who are an engine, a house of ideas, and very, very passionate about it. You've obviously both been involved in driving forward a number of ideas. Have you ever come across people sort of, oh no, not another idea from them? Has that ever been a challenge?
Oh, very often. I mean, our village also does a huge flower festival every year, and for years people didn't get involved because they said, well, they do it, they can get on with it. Quite who they were, I mean, you knew, but I mean, and they didn't invite any extra help because they said, well, if people want to help, of course we let them in, but nobody actually said, will you please help? And it wasn't until one committee said, right, that's it, we've had enough, we've done it for X years, we want a rest, that another group of people got together and said, well, we can't let this festival die because it's a whole village thing, really. We will get together. So you really don't want to get to the crunch of one committee having to give up before another one comes in. But that's often a good way to get a whole new group of people together. And then you start again, because the second group, hopefully, we learned, she said, from the first group, that you don't say, well, it's our little baby, don't come. We walked round this way, please help. Can you help? Can you help? And people said yes, and so hopefully, and he helped as well, and he'd never helped before. But it was, you have to ask, and you have to keep this open mind, and this is the one thing. And the other thing, which I learned as a community, as a charity fundraising manager, was you say thank you a lot, and you do not criticise people. You say thank you very much, and you think. But you do not tell them, because otherwise they'll walk away. You've got to be so tactful and diplomatic, but you have to thank people. And I don't think we thank people enough, because people think it's a thankless task, and who cares if I do it or not. So the people who do things must make sure they thank everybody profusely and mean it.
And there's about 30 or 40 people involved in that, and it's a 3-day thing at the end of August. And it raises nearly £10,000.
15.
Oh, 15?
At the last
count. Don't undersell yourself. There's the key thing there. Don't undersell your achievement.
I'm not going to let him. I'm sure
it was 10,000. Well, 15.
No.
That's even better. That's fabulous.
15.
But for a small village, that's a significant amount of money to raise.
And there's over 100 people come, plus their husbands. You see, because you have to never lose the sight that the spouse of whoever you're using is a valuable asset, so you're getting 2 for the price of 1. I always think,
yes, and I think many of us would recognise that the volunteer recruitment technique of the spouse giving an elbow over dinner,
the arm twisting.
You will help with that,
yes,
is a very common one. But Meg and Peter have picked up on there, I guess, a challenge that we talk about in terms of volunteer succession planning. This challenge of very, very often something runs successfully and then it stops because those people have got fed up, sometimes due to ill health or indeed death, they stop. And sometimes stuff carries on because people rally round. Sometimes it stops and never happens again. Your thoughts, I guess, on overcoming that challenge in community?
I said earlier, one of the key things is about running activities that engage a wide range of people and keeping a variety of activities on the go, as it were, to ensure that you've constantly got people coming forward who have an interest, even if it's in a small part. And it's about utilising that interest as it becomes available, and about being aware that as a group you do occasionally need input from other people, and then not being afraid to go back and ask for that input again. And one of the things that I think a lot of groups do is they don't ask for help because they're not those diamonds with the skills that say, like the sales skills that say, please come and help. So they'll fight on in silence and they'll do the little bit of work, getting more and more frustrated. But if you can get somebody within that group who says, well, actually, let's just go and ask somebody else for help, that brings in a bit of support. When that group does finally get to the stage where it just can't continue, they've probably got a group of people that have already been involved for a while, and they're like trained up volunteers who kind of slightly move in, as it were. Sometimes it's hard to see. I think organisations like us can help with that because we can make people aware that that's an issue and you need to look at that. And sometimes we can provide some interim help that covers an area for a small period of time while you find additional help. But it is about being aware, and it's about kind of promoting the range of things that you can do to constantly bring them in and to constantly bring in people of all ages. It helps to have a youth group that's constantly involved. It helps because when they're 18, 20, 25, their interests change and they're more likely to engage in new things. And not to forget that, the young people have just as much to offer sometimes as the retired professional who's been there, seen that and done it. Sometimes they've been there, seen that and done it once too often. So
Anna, awareness, a forward plan, and a sort of constant cycle of sort of engagement of getting people involved. Is that something that rings true with your experience?
I think I've had more of the other experiences.
More of the other experiences.
Where things come to a natural end. Again, maybe it is a personal perspective. There are the other issues of the newcomers coming in and trying to get involved and actually being open to that. So things do have that natural sustainability and change. So you don't just stick with the established communities. But sometimes things need to to end, and if there aren't the people there to run it and control it and to make it happen, then you think, well, was that service then really, or that group really necessary or really needed? There are so many pulls on people's times, so many different things happening in village communities. It is very hard to keep lots of things going. So I've not got any wisdom at all to offer on that sort of like forward planning.
But I think that lesson of not being afraid to let things end when they've run their natural course or are no longer fulfilling a need. I know with some of the strategic discussions we have with partners, that this idea of stopping a service that has been running for a number of years but is no longer, in the phrase, fit for purpose or meeting the need, and that's taking the positive decision to stop something and start something that works better, being a huge challenge for people.
I think it's having that clear mission or focus about the group or the organisation, because if you're focused on that, then that natural forward planning and sustainability will happen. But when you're just doing the same things you've been doing for years, or you're drifting, or you've not got that real sort of focus, then you can get to that situation where actually it might be better if the thing did just stop and people did other things.
Which I think nicely ties it back into Peter and Meg's experience with the parish plan, and the idea that was one way in which they identified the whole needs of the community, that forward vision and what those actions were to keep that fresh and alive. I'll pause there and I'll open up to any questions from our studio audience, as it were.
Hi, I'm Christine from Iceland. I'm thinking a little bit about planning ahead, because I believe that smart villages, smart communities need to plan ahead. And who is the future? The children are the future. And then we need to start raising those diamonds early on. And how do we get them to commit to their own community, to their area? I think the right way is to fasten the roots, to strengthen the roots. To, as we're doing in our area, we are making the heritage more important, to know where they're coming from, and that's why maybe when they get older they more want to volunteer to make their community, make their area better.
So I guess the question is, and I'll just repeat it so we pick it up on the microphones, how do you ensure the next generation of volunteers, that the young people engage with stuff, and the idea of using heritage to try and root people in their local community? Anyone want to respond?
Well, growing out of the community plan was the purchase of the village green, which we did this year. We purchased it from Norfolk County Council, and we managed to raise money from various sources. Breckland District Council, the Parish Council had money, but the second phase of this is to put play equipment onto the village green for toddlers, primary school children, teenagers, and we're putting in a adult fitness thing as well. But in terms of engaging the children, we've gone to the school, and in fact Meg's going to do a presentation at the school next week where we're going to ask them to do a project with the children so that they work out what type of play equipment they want. They choose it so that when it's there, they're completely involved in the purchase of it, and obviously they'll have what they want, and hopefully if they have what they want they'll look after it, and it will grow from there and involve the children in that way. And we have a tremendous amount of heritage, but we haven't thought of doing this, which is we have a 7th century cathedral, the ruins of a 7th century cathedral in our village, and I'm sure that could be the background of a really strong heritage project.
So the importance there of involving people early in not just activities but decisions, and maybe some inspiration there for the future in terms of using your own unique heritage.
Yeah.
Just to finish up on this subject, we start a little bit differently. When the children are 2 or 3 years old, they start to learn the name of the street. When they are 3 years old, or next generation, they learn the names of the mountains. And that's how we build upon their knowledge of their area. And we think that's a really good way of making them commit to their village. future.
So that's a specific approach in Iceland about using learning with very young children about the local place names, the local landmarks, as a way of building up both their knowledge, their local knowledge, but also their strength of connection to their local area. Any other questions? Hank?
Well, first, I think it's a very interesting discussion, and there are so many similarities with the situation, I think, in many countries. But just two things. On our paper, we got this getting the whole community involved, and I think that's not that easy in many situations. Sometimes I think you have to consider that there are certain groups they don't want to be involved, but then it's still important for the community to organize these things. And I had an experience a few weeks ago. We have in our village there's also a committee, and you said it's important that it's not just a small group, but one guy, his family lived there for ages in that community. He said, well, in that committee, there's nobody from those people who have been living there all the time. So it's so important that you include not just the older ones and not just the newcomers, but that it's a good mix of all of them, I think.
Yeah.
But that's my experience. I would like to learn.
So the importance of inclusion there, but also the challenge, or maybe just needing to understand of how you deal with when people don't want to be engaged in something. Any thoughts?
Well, I'd just like to say that you can't overestimate the value of these unique stunts, as we would call it. Like the Diamond Jubilee last year. During the day, we had 450 people attend during the day, and many people, were walking around, hadn't met their neighbours and met their neighbours, and people that were not known to us. We were able to start the communication with them, and then in the evening there were 250, often different people that came to the. We had a barbecue and we had a beacon lighting. There were 4,500 beacons across the whole country, and we all had a specific time to light the beacon. Ours was 10:15, and we had to light it immediately at 10:15. And these beacons lit up the whole of England and Scotland and Wales and Ireland, and then right the way across the Commonwealth as well. So it was a really big thing for the whole community to join in. So in a village of 1,160 adults, we had nearly 600 of those attend that function, and that is a tremendous community involvement. So.
Lots of people came who said they'd lived in the village, as you say, forever, and they said this was the first time they'd come out of their front door because it was on the street. And when we said we'd try to close the street, Norfolk County Council said, "Are you going to have a party of about 20?" We said, "No, we want 300-400."
And we did close. We got an official road
we had to
closure.
Close the road.
We
but
closed the road off
because people who lived in the street in the very old cottages came out, and they didn't have to go far. They just walked out their front door, and somebody thrust a drink and a piece of cake in their hand, because all the food, everybody just brought the food, and it was a bit like feeding the 5,000. We had food when we'd finished that we had to bag up and take round to different people. It was like a sandwich, that thing, because there was so much food came, all free, all just bring a plate, we said, to share, and everybody did, and it was a really good sharing experience. But a lot of the people, we were surprised, said, "I have never done that in here. I'd lived here for 40 years." So it was a very good thing.
And you wanted to come in there?
It was just on a completely similar vein. It's finding the different things for different people to do, but roughly at the same time to get those. Yeah. So for our Jubilee celebrations, we had a family walk, heritage through the with a Queers a Treasure Hunt, so that lots of children came to that in the morning. We then moved to our stave, which is by the river, for a fete, where each of the groups in the community had a stall and the young people were playing in the music band. We then had a tea dance for the older people, with the nostalgia, remembering times past past. And then in the evening, we had a pub quiz for the adults who'd like to have a drink and be a bit rowdy. So it was over a whole day, but managed to meet lots of different people's needs throughout it. So it's just trying to, lots of different ways and messages to get out.
Thank you.
Excellent. And I think that image of the beacon and those activities of both pulling a community in, and particularly, I've never been involved, I've never engaged in anything until something's put on and that they're asked to be engaged. But also the idea with this project and similar projects of that beacon then linking between communities. So it's relationships within communities, trying to find something for everyone. But also building those relationships between communities. And on that note, I'd like to thank my contributors to this session, to Anne, to Peter, to Meg, and to Rick. Thank you very much. And we will close there. If you've missed any of this, we've been recording it, so we'll be putting up onto YouTube and making sure things like the audio levels are all right. Thanks again to our contributors for the first session. I hope you found this useful, and if you've got any feedback, you can tweet us at Norfolk RCC or email us office@norfolkrcc.org.uk. Let us know whether you think we should do similar events in the future, any ideas for topics, and really any thoughts on any of these issues. Thank you.